Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellen Ng, and I'm the Economic Development Specialist here at HTDC. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today at our second Hawaii Women in Tech series, brought to you by the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, the Entrepreneurs Sandbox, and the True Initiative. Some quick introductions to the organizations behind this effort. HTDC is a state agency attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. Our mandate is to grow the tech economy and workforce here in Hawaii. The Entrepreneurs Sandbox is our co-working facility here in Kaka'ako, and it's managed by our partner, Box Jelly. If you have not visited the space before, I encourage you to do so when the lockdown is over. The True Initiative is a joint effort among the private and public sectors, together with the state of Hawaii, to encourage knowledge sharing and the adoption of technology and best practices to create a resilient and thriving Hawaii. The True Initiative is an extension of the Hawaii Executive Collaborative. And if you are interested, or if your organization is interested in how you can be part of the True Initiative, please visit www.hec.org/true, TRUE. So some housekeeping before we dive into the session today. Firstly, please keep your audio lines muted and your videos disabled. Feel free to send in your questions throughout the session through the chat function. And please make sure to select everybody when you send the question in so that we can all see it. Selected questions will be addressed during the Q&A portion. So today we have the privilege of speaking to Deena Tearney, founder and CEO of Pacific Point, Hawaii's only Salesforce certified consulting company. Let's see. Hi. So let's unmute her. Okay, so Deena began her career as a software engineer and program analyst after graduating from the University of Texas at San Antonio's Business School with a degree in information systems. On the mainland, she has worked as a consultant for large corporations such as IBM Global Services, Capgemini, Ernst & Young, ComUSA, and Sprint. And when she moved to Hawaii, she served as an IT consultant for the Hawaii State Judiciary and Hawaiian Airlines. And in 2011, she took the plunge and started her own company, Pacific Point. Deena is passionate about giving back to the community through tech mentorships and encouraging the youth to pursue careers in technology. She also serves as a committee member for the True Initiative, as I talked about earlier, and has been active in getting Hawaii businesses up to speed with technology adoption. Deena also has her own podcast series called The Audio Project with Deena Tearney, where she interviews interesting tech and business experts as well as entrepreneurs. We will share the link later in the chat box, so definitely check it out in your own time. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Deena Tearney, founder and CEO of Pacific Point, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Hi, thank you.
So Deena, if you want, you can go ahead and share your slide as we jump into the questions that we have for you today.
Sounds good. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, great. So Deena, tell us, about Pacific Point, and as founder and CEO, what is your role in the company?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Ellen, for inviting me today. I'm super happy to be part of this. I know we originally didn't plan for it to be virtual, but hey, we're going with the flow, and I love that we kept it alive. So thank you again, Ellen. So just a little bit about our company. Pacific Point is a consulting firm that helps businesses and organizations leverage the power of Salesforce to achieve business goals, to drive automation and improve their process and have a better customer experience. As Ellen stated, our company there's some stats here. Our company was founded in 2011. We're about 8 years old, coming up on 9. We're focused on Salesforce. We have an amazing team of people and wonderful consultants with very credentialized, with over 80 certifications on the team. The approach that we have towards projects is really focusing on our clients' business and understanding how they run their business, what are their challenges, what are they trying to accomplish, and we leverage our knowledge of Salesforce and we bring that together to create the best solutions for them on the platform. And you can see that we're in several locations. At the bottom of the slide, you also see our Pledge 1%. And Ellen mentioned True Initiative, and we're really proud to be part of True and have opportunities to do mentorship, as she mentioned. We've hosted workshops and things of that nature. Our real passion is to give 1% back of our time towards helping youth pursue careers in technology. I know later I'm going to talk a little bit about my career, but I can tell you a career in technology has been very rewarding for me, and I'd love to encourage others to pursue that from an early age.
Okay.
And my role, I guess.
Role. Yeah. So how's it? What's a typical day in the office like for you, and how is it different now with work from home and the whole lockdown?
That's a good question. I think that a typical day is very unpredictable. Even before COVID-19, we're always running. There's a lot of projects going on across our company. I have a role to, help make sure that the projects are doing well. I want to make sure our team is developing. So I focus on team, I focus on our clients, but more importantly, I'm always looking at growth and how we can continue to do a better job at what we do and expand and grow across, grow our company.
Yeah, so I think one thing that, kind of resonated with, when I got to know you was when I first moved to the island, because I'm not from here. And, Deena, you're not from here either. So maybe you just want to share a little bit of, kind of your background and where you came from.
Sure, happy to. So as far as my career journey, you mentioned it in the intro. I started off my career as a software engineer, super technical. I was building applications. And pretty much within the first year, I had a unique opportunity to work on the leading CRM of its time. It was called Siebel. I feel old even just saying it, but it was called Siebel. And it was a great time. And I loved the product. I love learning about CRM solutions and how businesses can do a better job to market to their customers, to sell to their customers and serve. And so I had that unique opportunity very early in my career, and it really just stuck with me throughout. As you mentioned, I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. That was where I started my career. And, when I came across that great opportunity, it was fantastic. But I will say this, and I want to bring up a few key points that I think are very relevant to today's moment of COVID-19. So when I graduated from college, it was a very booming time in the economy. Maybe you could say similar to how things were prior to COVID-19. People were hiring like crazy. IT was in huge demand. It was a pretty amazing time. People were probably, taking jobs and getting jobs that they had no ability to actually do. I mean, it was a really crazy moment. So I was fortunate in that sense that was the start. But I will say that very, very quickly for me, the dot-com bubble burst, 9/11 happened, and I was at a company where I saw us hiring, and then going to layoffs. And I was at the company, and I ended up surviving 4 rounds of layoffs in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. It was very stressful, probably similar to many people today dealing with COVID-19. And I remember our projects had died up. There wasn't hardly anything to do. We were trying to sell to the business internally and say like, hey, there's some more things we could do on Siebel and help you, automate things. They just couldn't get the budget. They couldn't make it happen. Mm-hmm. And while it may sound like a luxury at the time, I remember getting to work. I lived, like a 2-minute drive. It's kind of spoiled. I drove to work at maybe 9:30. I'd show up. I'd drive home for lunch and take a leisurely approach to my lunch. I probably spent an hour and a half, 2-hour lunch. I'd go back to work, and it was like 4:30 or so. I'd leave. 5 o'clock. I'd leave. There was nothing. There was very, very little to do. Mm-hmm. And it was really unfortunate. And I think some people were like, yay, we don't have that much stuff to do. Well, all of a sudden I started thinking to myself, like, I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I remember looking at websites at jobs that were Siebel jobs, things that I should be qualified for given the number of years I had worked with it, which wasn't long, but it was enough. Mm-hmm. And I looked at job postings and I would be like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that. I've heard of this, and I was going down the list. And I started to realize, and that was a pivotal moment. I'm bringing it up because I would love to encourage our audience to learn the lesson that I learned that day. And you may already know it, but for me, it was a recognition that experience knowing how to do something, applying yourself, and demonstrating that you really have that skill was the number one thing. And so I looked for a job so that I could get into a smaller team and start to develop those true Siebel skills. And I did that, you know, and so that was kind of, I'm highlighting that moment in time because it was maybe relevant and I think definitely pivotal. I think even now today, I love learning. I want to learn. I want to continue to grow and learn what's new with technology is always changing. Salesforce has changed dramatically in the amount of time that I've seen it and worked with it. So, you know, I definitely would encourage our audience to do that. That was a lesson learned very early during a somewhat similar time. From there, I continued my career in doing Siebel work, and I changed jobs, like I mentioned earlier, on a smaller team. I got tons of hands-on experience from the old days. It was like server type stuff to client, you know, the desktop type stuff to the web, you know, all that. So I was getting a lot of good hands-on experience. And then I faced the same thing where projects started to dry up. It wasn't necessarily an economic thing. It was more just that company just wasn't at that point. So I started to do just like basic support things. I, again, felt like this wasn't for me. So I decided to pursue a career as a consultant. And as a consultant, it gave me the opportunity to diversify my skill set, to learn across multiple industries, to always be working on a variety of projects, large and mostly large, but actually I don't think I ever had a small project for those companies, but mostly large. And so it was a great learning opportunity. And since then, I've had a love of consulting because I felt like it was this push to always learn. I got to learn so much, and that was my passion, to keep learning. It was the most valuable thing.
So you talked a little bit about, you know, kind of the insecurities of working for someone else, right? You know, for another company. You know, would that actually be one of the reasons why you started or inspired you to start Pacific Point, or were there other reasons for that?
No, I mean, I think that I wouldn't say that I was necessarily a type of person that didn't like working for someone else. I mean, I have no problem with that. I think that what really happened to birth the company Pacific Point specifically was when I moved to Hawaii. And I was running a program, as you mentioned, here in Hawaii. And I realized when I was like, okay, well, great, we've got this program. We need to hire this kind of person that's done this and this kind of person that's done that. And I put some jobs out. I got approvals. I put the jobs out, and I realized there's not a lot of people that know how to do that. And it was very foreign for me at that time to recognize the reality of our talent pool. And I remember very vividly at that moment thinking it would be fantastic if someone could help solve this problem for Hawaii, because even though we're far, we shouldn't lower our bar for what we expect to be what a consultant should be able to do. And so that was a moment when I felt like there might be an opportunity for a business here. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to stay here, so it was it was just an idea. But that's how it started. It wasn't so much that I was insecure completely for business, but I had I would say as it relates to the insecurity for business, I've just always felt like an individual, I would say this to anyone, and maybe you and I talked about it when I first met you, is always chase experience, chase opportunity, chase learning, because the money will follow. If you chase just the money, you're going to lose out, and at some point you're going to cap.
So I think on that point, it's really interesting. So I mean, I think there might be some people who are students who are on this call, you know, just asking this on behalf of them. What are your thoughts working for an established company first when you come out of school, or do your own startup? Any takes on that?
You know, I don't think there's a path that could work one way or the other. I think it's so much up to the individual and probably the idea. I think working for a company is great. You get so much experience. You get to learn very real time how to and how not to do things. You know, you get to like see, you know, how, gee, I really, you know, that didn't play out so well for so-and-so. And that's a great way to learn. I think if you just graduate from college and just start something, you'd really just need probably a group of people around you that have some, you know, advice that could help you along the way. And if you have a fantastic idea, I'm sure it would work wonderfully. I mean, there's a lot of demonstrations of that as well. So I think it truly could go either way.
So, you know, when you you started your company in 2011. It's 2020, so 9 years, right? So it's a long time. What are some of the challenges that you faced while building this company?
Yeah, I mean, the early days are certainly the hardest, like the getting the first deals, right? Having the persistence to continue to do that is really hard. And I think if you go into, I've definitely given some tips to those that have decided to maybe pursue entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I just warn them, like, brace yourself and know that the first period of time is going to be very, very difficult. And it doesn't really stop being difficult, but the first couple years, at least for me, were very difficult because you think like, great, I have this awesome idea, you're super excited, and it's going to take you a long time before you're really going to start to see the fruits of all of that. So I would say it took us a good maybe year to 2 years before the momentum that was built up over that time just really started to roll. Now the challenges are different, and they're, again, it's not necessarily easier, but the challenges are no different. You still have a fair share of challenges. They tend to be different. They're more maybe team related or administrative related. They might be, I mean, there's a million possible things that can come up that you have to deal with in that mode. But regardless, you really have to have the patience and also a lot of strength. It takes a lot of strength because you're going to hear a lot of negativity and a lot of people saying, I mean, I had a lot of people in the early days that kind of diminutized what I was planning, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that doesn't really work in Hawaii. We've never had that kind of consulting firm here. Those were the conversations I absolutely had in the early
Mm-hmm.
days. Obviously less now because it's proven, but
How did you get around that negativity?
I think I just, I hate to say I ignored it. I mean, when someone would say that, I'd just be like, okay, I'm not they can say what they want to say and they can believe what they want to believe just as much as I can believe what I want to believe. And so you just stay focused. If you feel like it's right, if all of a sudden you need to change, then change. There's nothing wrong with that. So, but I think you just have to block it out and stay focused on what you set out to do. That's the most important thing.
So I believe there's some, men, and even, I mean, there are women and also men who are looking to build their own companies here in Hawaii. Do you have any advice that you could give them?
For men and women?
For women, let's focus on the women.
Okay.
This is a women in tech event. Sorry, guys, but
I wasn't sure where you were going with it. I was like, okay. If you're wanting to start your own business, I think again, a lot of it sort of depends on what it is. But, the most important thing to start with is you've got to have a revenue stream. So figure out what the product is, get the product solid, get a revenue stream going. That takes a lot of work. After you get the revenue, then you can start worrying about the other bits, but that's the starting point. And if you don't have the great product, but you have a great product, you don't have the revenue, those two things really have to be together for you to have a true business.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit with us on how you found your first client?
Ooh, actually, yeah, I can. And this is also advice that I give people. And it's a little tough for some, I think, because there's a bit of an ego. But what I did, when I started the company, I was unique in the sense that we started with no contracts. So some people that start consulting firms pre-sell a contract while they're still employed at their regular job. That wasn't the case for me. So I didn't have any contracts. So I basically went down and a list, you could call it a list, of people that I knew. And I was thinking about, how do I have an angle to help them maybe at their companies? And I just individually reached out to a lot of different people, letting them know that I had this business. And it was a very short, simple thing. And starting to meet people, take people out, meet people for coffee, meet people for lunch, just meet people, go to different joined events, things of that nature. And there was someone, I very rarely did this, but there were a couple, I think I made 2 offers for this. So I'm not saying you should do this across the board, but what it does is it helps you create a beachhead, because you got to get a first project so you can reference it later, right? And so what I did was, there was someone that I knew and I trusted. He was in a position of authority at his organization, and I just offered to do a short assessment pro bono. So it was a 2-week assessment on a pro bono basis. I can come in and look at some set of technology. And I should say this, when I started the company, I didn't market myself as CRM because I felt like it wasn't the right thing to do at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was the ultimate goal, but I didn't want to shut myself out of opportunity at the beginning and then just put me to the side because all I knew was CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little bit generalist in the beginning. So that's how that happened. I did a pro bono. This is a great story because I did a pro bono project that was probably 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, for a client. And they are still my client today, 9 years later, paid customer.
Great.
All the time. So it's worth it, but you've got to be willing to, I was smart about it. I didn't just like blast a big thing and say, I'm going to do a bunch of free work. I was very specifically targeting a couple people.
Mm-hmm. So kind of giving a little bit of the incentive for them to work with you and prove yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Give me a chance to show and it obviously panned out to be good. So I'm happy about the results.
So when did you know it was a turning point for you at your company?
Well, yeah, it was a really cool transition for us. So the company started predominantly as we were generalists. So everyone's like, "What do you do?" And I was just like, I focused on the biggest general gap I could see in the Hawaii market, and that was that there weren't people that had, there weren't enough. There are people for sure, but there weren't enough people that have enterprise level implementation experience, knowing how to implement software across a complex enterprise. And so what I did was I started recruiting from my pool of people that I had worked with in the past and asked them to join my team as I started closing, these deals. And I recruited, I basically said, these are staffed, essentially it's like, here's a full-time resource, comes to your team, helps you manage your project, right? Helps you do the business analysis on this complex project. So we did that. While that was going on and the revenue was happening, I was then working on the CRM stuff. I started doing Salesforce projects and behind the scenes, and that just sort of started to ramp up. And what we saw, to your point about the turning point, was we gradually shifted from the majority of our work being just general enterprise, here's a resource, go put them at a large enterprise customer, to all of our work is Salesforce. But it was, I ran that first to have the revenue, and then I did the Salesforce stuff.
Great. So exciting. So as the founder and as the CEO of the company, you have to manage a team of people, right? So what do you think makes a good leader?
It's a good question. I have in the back of my mind, I think the other thing that comes with experience of having worked at a lot of places is working with some great managers and ones that you weren't as big of a fan of, and working for companies that you liked and companies whose cultures you didn't like as much. And so when I was thinking about Pacific Point, and still to this day, I want to create an environment that is, helps our people grow, our own staff grow, our own team of consultants, where my goal is, it's an internal goal of mine to say when and if this person, any person on my team were to ever move on to their next career, that they would look back and say, I learned the most there. I got the most out of that. Like, I never thought I would be exposed to that many opportunities and gain that much experience in whatever the amount of time was that they're at our company. And so I think as a leader, it's important that you think about what it's like for the employee at your organizations, and how do you make it meaningful for them? How do you elevate them? And sometimes I push my guys. I really do. But I think they know, I hope they know, I tell them that my place of intent is that I want them to be their best selves. And I can see skills in people that they don't sometimes see in them. And I want to push them a little bit so that they get that opportunity to try. So I think as a leader, it's important to think about, the employee and how you do that. Now, of course, the other side of it is, as you lead an organization, you need to think about your corporate culture and how do you gain new business, right? To make it attractive. How do you add the right value to your customer? So it depends on what angle of leadership you're talking about.
Was there like a specific skill set that you had to work on to become a better leader?
I don't, I think these days I have maybe I have less patience towards like coaching and mentoring people. I should work on that. That's for sure. I think, and it's not so much a patient thing. It's just that there's so much on my plate sometimes where I think, maybe I could do a better job of that. But I think over the years, you naturally become better at it the more that you work on it. And so I don't know that there's any one particular leadership skill that I could say, I had to specifically work on, but through experience, you're always gonna spot those moments and develop them.
Yeah. So I want to, talk a little bit more about kind of being a woman in technology, right? And that was kind of like the heart of this whole session as well. So, personally, I faced challenges as a woman in technology, but I wanted to kind of get your take. Did you face any challenges, through your career in technology?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll just preface this by saying that I'm not one to really notice or draw attention to certain persons, whether it's my own person or whatever's shortcomings. And sometimes those stereotypes can be perceived as that. I tend to just kind of I just do what I need to do. But when I remember, I'll never forget it. I had just got hired by Capgemini Ernst & Young. One of the women that interviewed me, because I went through a huge round of interviews, very complex, but one of the women that interviewed me, she was also based in the Dallas office. And so I got the job. After I got the job, I'll never forget, because she reached out to me and she told me, Deena, I want to tell you that it's going to be very important for you to make sure that you always have a seat at the table. Know your stuff, know what you're talking about, and speak up. Because if you don't say anything, they're gonna forget you're there. They're gonna forget that you have an opinion. Don't wait till they ask you. And I'll never forget, because I remember thinking at the time, like, why'd she have to tell me that, but I think obviously that was her amazing mentorship for me, to state that to me, and I value that to this day. And I would encourage everyone to, definitely get out of your comfort zone. But I tell people and encourage people that if they're afraid to speak up, the way that you can build that confidence is by learning something that you know very, very well. I speak about this a lot when I talk to even youth, is like, you need to learn something that you feel really confident about. That's what's going to give you the confidence to then speak up. And so, I would say that was a moment where she gave me that advice. And I would say that it was good advice, because I would say less so in Hawaii, but more so when I was on the US mainland, that there were way more men than women, like way more. It was not uncommon that I would be the only woman in a meeting. Yep. Here, it's a little bit different.
So I think another thing that's interesting, given this time, where, Hawaii, right, with COVID, we kind of realized that, okay, there's a huge dependence on the tourist industry, for example, and we definitely need to diversify our economy, to create a more resilient Hawaii. So, are there any tips that you could, or advice you give to, women who are looking to possibly transition into the tech field, whether it be early career or mid-stage? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think your point is well taken, that, I think this COVID-19, the advent of COVID-19 has certainly made it very apparent that the importance of businesses to invest in technology is it's number one on the list. And I'll tell you, just, for anecdotal info, we have some customers that are on Salesforce, and they've invested in Salesforce and their technology, over a period of time. And when COVID-19 happened and they needed something, as an example, there's a company that needed they've been on Salesforce, right? They've invested in the technology. And when COVID-19 happened, there were a lot of people talking about deferring payments or having payment plans, like they're struggling, these types of things. We updated Salesforce very quickly for them to track what kind of payment situations, they were making outbound phone calls, calling all of their guys, all of their customers saying like, hey, how you're doing? And then they were tracking sort of what sort of payment arrangements were being discussed with those customers. And very quickly, it was done in a day, it was done. And then now that information can be fed over to their accounting system. So their accounting systems know like, okay, great. Like I don't have to worry about that. This is the plan for payment. We have other customers that have talked about maybe using chatbots or live agents so that people, when they all worked from home, they have the ability to quickly speak with customers. But they've made that investment in technology. So when it was time to say, hey, I want to do something new because of the changing market, they were ready to go. We've had other customers who don't have Salesforce and are coming to us asking for our help to quickly set up call centers to help them manage the demand, to implement things like cloud-based CTI, which is basically a telephone system that pre-pops and looks up people and helps them quickly track it, records all the conversations, gives them all the dashboards of number of calls. They're starting from scratch. It's quick. It doesn't take long as we don't have the luxury of time at this moment, so it's not as fancy as it could be. But I would definitely say that those clients that have invested in Salesforce technology and probably technology in general have had an easier time adapting. And now with this, I believe that companies are not only recognizing the importance, but they're going to start investing in it. And to your point, for people that are looking at it, I'll go back to my point earlier, your experience is number one. Like gain experience. And I know it's tough because, like maybe if you don't have a job, you don't have the opportunities, like maybe you do a little bit of pro bono. I mean, there's ways to sort of figure out how to get that hands-on experience. Get some training under your belt. Salesforce has Trailheads, which is free online training available. And I think companies should be making that investment in people as well to help them ramp up. It's things that we've been telling our customer, but I think now it's like all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I need to ramp up my team. It's not something that happens overnight. It's an effort of time. So for those people that are looking at making the shift, I would say start with number one, any kind of online training that's available, and start reaching out to organizations and offering some assistance and in terms of what their technology's needs might be. I don't know, people might be more willing to offer, some kind of programs where they could get some help. People need help now, so.
Yeah, so you think with this whole COVID crisis and with companies recognizing the importance of technology and then investing in it, there's going to be opening up more opportunities and career opportunities in technology, and people, the women would have to get ready for that.
I believe that 100%. You should absolutely get ready and continue to live it. I mean, that was the thing that I learned when, all those bad things were happening back early in my career, just out of college. I mean, you can imagine I was just like, oh my God, like this is crazy. But that was a lesson, I'm glad that it happened, as scary as it may have been at that moment. But I would encourage anybody now, like, let this be our reminder that, get that experience and let that never stop, always be learning, always be gaining experience, seeking training and learning. I mean, even now, I was on a client call, one of the guys on my team, we're working on a project with a school doing an education architecture for K through 12. And I love getting into the details. I love learning. Right now I'm plugging in because I need to, and I'm excited. I love that stuff. And I think it's important to never stop learning.
So what kind of resources do you rely on to learn? Do you read books? Do you podcasts? What's your go-to?
Well, for me, it's definitely going to be any kind of Salesforce material that's available. And there's way more than you can ever imagine or ever get through. But I think the hands-on, the good thing about Salesforce is they do offer a free org. They call it a dev org, which is basically an instance where you can play around with Salesforce and develop whatever you want. It's free. It's not a production type of org, but it's purely for demonstration or development purposes. And it's a great way to get your hands on, because hands-on is more important than sitting around and reading a book or going through some training. We love certifications on our team, but I can tell you certifications don't mean that you necessarily know how to do something. So doing and learning and experience is number one over any kind of training.
So, I'm just wondering, for women like yourself in the technology field, do you see how women can differentiate themselves or just stand out? And again, sometimes I don't really like going into the whole gender thing.
Yeah,
But if you
yeah,
have any
no.
thoughts on that.
No, that's fine. I'm the same way. I'm definitely not one for the battle of the sexes, but I think I still feel like I don't think that women necessarily have to act or be like men. I think that's the thing. I think just remembering that, like, you don't have to mimic the behaviors of a man that's successful on your team. You can still be yourself. And at the end of the day, I think any woman or man that's themselves, their true authentic self, is going to differentiate. So I would probably lean on that at the most, as much as possible. So.
Okay, so before we go into Q&A, one question, the last one for me, it's what keeps you inspired? As a CEO of a company, leading teams, doing multiple projects with family, how do you keep inspired? How do you keep moving and going?
I'm inspired because I see the power of what what Salesforce can do for our clients, and the reward that we feel when we see the result of how it impacts and helps a customer. And I keep meeting customers and I hear what they're dealing with, and I think I can help you. I can solve that problem, and that keeps me, and I think the rest of the team, highly motivated, ready to help people. And there's so much power in what Salesforce has going on. I mean, even right now, Salesforce has been very generous with a series of amazing offerings as a result of COVID-19 for many companies. And they just came out with work.com, which is a set of tools and solutions that are helping companies get ready to go back to the workplace, looking at contact tracing and tracking their own individual PPE at their organization. So I think there's always, something like that that's really going to keep you motivated, because you're like, wow, technology is so incredibly powerful. It's ever changing. And that's what I would say.
Great. So let's go to my favorite part of the session, which is the Q&A. We have a lot of questions flowing in. So Deena, if you want to share your slide.
Oh, sure.
And we can start with, let's see, what are some of the questions from everybody here? So so from the Chamber of Commerce, so the Chamber of Commerce is asking, what is the percentage of your clients? What is the split, in terms of percentage between Hawaii-based and versus mainland clients?
I would say the majority. So I'm not sure, but it's definitely in the 90s, I would imagine. And most of our work is here. So we don't, we don't target the mainland. We are here, and Hawaii has kept us incredibly busy. So it's a great place for people that are hungry for innovation. I can tell you, before COVID-19, because that seems to be the new mile marker. It's like, is that pre-COVID-19 or after COVID-19? But before COVID-19, many companies in Hawaii were coming to us saying that they need help because there's more competition in the market. They never had faced as much competition, but this open market and new technologies that are coming and competing and enabling outside companies to compete was really pushing local companies to say, gee, now I've got to really hustle for my clients. I got to hustle for my customers. And so I think Hawaii has kept us busy for that reason, that Hawaii's market's changing.
Just shout out from Misty. She's saying, I would like to say thank you for verbalizing the don't chase the money philosophy. It really puts things into perspective and sets a positive attitude. Great. The Chamber of Commerce has another question for you, Deena. They're asking, what role do you think internships play in career preparedness? And does Pacific Point have an internship program? If so, is it only for college students only, or for college and high school?
Good question. I think internships are great. I did 2 internships myself when I was in college. I learned a lot. It was great to just see what it's like to be in the quote real world. So that was good. I don't think I actually did a whole lot of anything, but that was the world at that time. I'll say it again, like when I first graduated, it was the weird heyday of, you know, .com and all of that. And so jobs, yeah, I'm pretty sure they were just paying us to just hopefully recruit us to stay there. So all we did was play, they take us out and do stuff. But that one aside, I do think that internships are incredibly important. And we do have an internship program at Pacific Point. Right now, it's focused on students that are in their final year of college. We are with intent that they've kind of already gone through some base curriculum. They've gone through maybe their IT stuff that they've completed, and they're ready to start looking at that next chapter when they graduate. So we look for people that are in final semester. We don't have a high school program or otherwise at this point. Last year, we did volunteer to have a high school. We sponsored a high school intern as part of the STEM Works program that's based in Maui. And he was great. He came in and did like a thing for like 6 weeks, but it's a little tougher. So we tend to go more for the last year of college students.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Vince is asking, do you see work from home per COVID-19 a paradigm shift of virtual work for companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the company. I mean, I do think that there were a lot of companies and some of our clients as well who struggled the moment that work from home came into being, that they didn't have flexible technology. They didn't, you know, have everything in place to really get them to that ability to run completely, have everybody working completely from home. So I think it's absolutely going to change some things. I think it might change, you know, the traditional always coming to work model. At Pacific Point, we kind of have somewhat of a flexible model. We have a lot of remote employees as well, so we're accustomed to working remote. So it's a little different for us, but I think when you look across different organizations, I think they're still going to have people come in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Salesforce themselves, right? I mean, they're planning people to come back to the office. They're getting ready for it. It's not to say that every role is the same. I think that's really what you have to look at as a company is what does that person perform and what will it be? And I think people, you're right, are going to start thinking a little harder about that. You know, hopefully putting the technology in place to prepare them for that flexibility.
Sure. Great. So Ruby is asking, besides having specific Salesforce experience, what transferable skills would be beneficial for Salesforce consulting?
Well, I think what's good about consulting, I don't know if that's what the question is just generic. If you set Salesforce aside and you look at someone like me or someone else that might be on the team, you know, analytical capabilities, ability to take a business process, dissect it, pull it apart, and engineer it in a way that matches with whatever technology it might be. So business process analysis is a hugely transferable skill to probably almost any technology. Another one I think is being able to communicate in a consulting space to a variety of stakeholders is incredibly important. I came from a technology background, so sometimes I can really drill. I'm not saying I'm an expert anymore, but I can drill down on some technical details as I came from that background, but I can also talk to an executive and I can also talk to mid-level people and staff level. And I think being able to really know how to tailor that, what are you trying to say? That applies, right? That applies across the board, whether you're talking Salesforce, or you're talking anything else. And I think systems development lifecycle, you know, agile methodologies, and you know, whatever the methodologies are that you use to implement software, that's pretty standard. I mean, it's not unique to Salesforce, right? Everybody does. I mean, SDLC, it's like classic stuff that you learn in college. It's pretty much the same thing. So, you know, those are very transferable skills and things that, you know, people can learn and use with any technology.
And I mean, it's applicable to a lot of roles too, right? Even outside of technology in a way.
100%.
Communication skills, project management skills, and so on.
Exactly.
So Yeah, so Sandy is asking, she said, what do you think the tech industry can do more of to help foster a better representation for women?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like women maybe just don't, I don't know if it's necessarily the industry or like who's to quote blame. I mean, I think that women sometimes maybe don't know about what the opportunities are sometimes. And that's another reason why we're doing 1% pledge back to youth, and is to just let people understand what career opportunities there are. Because to your point, Ellen, there's some women that are in technology and they're really great at the project management side, or they're really great at software engineering. I mean, and so sometimes just knowing what the options are based off of your skill set. But I think a lot of women think like, oh my God, it's tech. Like, I just can't, no, that's just not for me. And they have an image of what it may or may not be. So maybe to answer that, maybe that's what it is the tech industry doing a slightly better job of coming out and explaining that there's a full spectrum of skill sets. I mean, you could be a trainer. If you're really great at training on technologies, it's fantastic to do. But you could also, I mean, I know a lot of women that are amazing architects and great coders, but that's not it. And that's not all there is to it. And so maybe the industry could do a better job of explaining that there's a wealth of roles depending on what your interests be. But a career in technology, even if it is one of those, you know, softer type of functions, is extremely needed, very valuable, very much needed.
Yeah, so I mean, we call it kind of like the technology adjacent jobs, right? You know, where you rely on a lot of other skills and technology is a layer over it, where you use it to, you know, create an outcome.
Yeah.
So Camelia is asking, does Pacific Point have any internships for UX UI designer students?
That's a good question. You should go ahead and look. I've got a contact info up here. You can reach out to us. I'll say this, where UX UI comes into play for Salesforce, because Salesforce has a wide range of products. So in the range of products, everyone's kind of familiar with the standard marketing, sales, and service. But in addition, Salesforce has a product called Salesforce Communities. And Salesforce Communities is essentially a web portal platform that's based on the Salesforce, you know, database, or if you want to call it. And so that one sometimes allows for a lot more freedom in terms of what the UI and UX experience is, whereas core product of Salesforce, the UI is sort of the UI. I mean, you can do some configurations to it and you can do some changes, but you're not really going to completely change the whole look of it. Whereas on a Salesforce community, that might be your public facing website. In that instance, you can truly create, you know, whatever experience you want. So for that person, I would say, please contact us.
Okay, great. So Camelia, you heard that, you know, Deena's email is on the screen, so reach out and ask for more details. Jessica is asking, Deena, you mentioned the importance of enterprise implementation skills. Can you give an example of some skills one would learn from an enterprise implementation?
Of skills they would learn from that? Yeah, you know, you learn the complexity of a complex, when it's an enterprise project, you learn the complexity across different teams, different stakeholders. You learn about the, you know, policies have to change, like there's so much to maneuver, you've got vendors going on. If you do a small project for a small or mid-sized company, you don't have the ability to learn how to maneuver those complex things that just big companies have. And it's a skill that's a little difficult to just explain, but it's really just that experience of having to say, oh, okay, well, did we reach out to the IT team to get access to people, right? I mean, just getting that, can we get access to the database? Sometimes that's an entire like series of things that has to take place, right? It's not just when you're working with a small business, they're like, oh, you want access to the database? Here you go. You know, it's done. But there's approvals, you know, to release something into production, right? You have a whole control board. That's what you see in enterprise level. And so sometimes that, if you haven't done that, then it starts to become like, what are we doing? Like, I don't get it. And it's a great thing to learn. And the people on our team have kind of run that spectrum where they've had well, not everyone, but most people have had enterprise. Some people have it small, and that's I love Hawaii for this reason, that we actually can mix things up for everybody on the team, is to gain cross experience. But when you have enterprise, it really helps you when you run mid, but they aren't treated the same. There's all these like unusual things that big companies do. Honestly, it's a lot of red tape and things like that.
Okay. So Martina, she's asking, are there any special skills or software that you would recommend for market analysts? Maybe from Salesforce.
Market analysts.
I'm sure that there's some marketing automation.
Oh, marketing? Yeah, marketing for sure. Sorry, I didn't know if that's what was meant. But for marketing, absolutely. Yeah.
Market analysts. So maybe Martina, I'm not sure if that's whether we answered your question. If not, feel free to send in the follow-up question. But she's also asking that you mentioned that hands-on is always better than any kind of certification or training. How do you prove that someone who does not know cannot do the job? And how do you get that first project?
How do you get that? I mean, it's not easy. I'm going to say that. I think to your point, you have to have something, let's say on your profile or your resume, that gives the impression that you're somebody that has some credential. Like you said, maybe you did get a certification, or maybe you finished up some trailhead badges on Salesforce, or you finished, I mean, even as simple as your degree. I mean, it could be, you have to write something right on your background that says you're someone that has that interest and willingness. And then you have to hope. I mean, it's a lot of work to put the resumes out there and hope for the best. I think the second thing is that in this day and age, like, this might not be a bad time to even offer, while you're continuing your job search, for a company that would be willing to bring you on in a, let's say, entry type of IT situation, to gain experience, then offering to do some pro bono. I mean, there are lots of even nonprofits that need help, like with technical things. They may not be the number one set of experience that you're going to get in the world, but there are people that may be willing to give you a shot at having your hands, get in there and see what is going on, and let you have a chance at trying to solve their problems using Salesforce. Or whatever, I shouldn't say that. I'm just naturally going to say that.
So someone is asking, why is today's webinar important to you?
Well, I think it's important for people to feel encouraged during this time, that, this is, if you're out of a job or things are getting stressful, you're not sure if you're going to maintain a job, that to feel encouraged to think about what can you do? Because again, I just relate it back to my own personal experience. I wanted to be able to share that message with you. There's a lot of stories throughout my whole career, but I really honed in on that piece because I felt like it was important, and a message that I'd love to encourage people with, that, it's tough, it's not easy, but it's a valuable lesson can be learned during moments of crisis. And I think if we can take that and share that, that's really why it was important for me. And I do believe that businesses will begin to they've already recognized the importance to invest in technology. So great, like, this is your chance. Like, let's get some experience and offer some help.
Mm-hmm. So follow-up question on that is, where do you think this webinar series would go from here?
Wow.
It's probably not a question that both of us would have to sit down and figure out, but any thoughts on that?
Where it will go from here, it'll probably end up on my podcast for one, but I think where it will go, I would love to see, to your point earlier, Ellen, about Hawaii's economy and how it's very tourism driven. We've probably been, I think I've read articles that Hawaii's been really hit the hardest because of our, we're heavily dependent on tourism. And when the flights are locked down, the hotels have to shut and the restaurants close, and all these things happen that have an enormous impact on us, greater than other states in the US. And I hope that this will also help those businesses. I hope that it might be a pivotal point. I don't know if the webinar is going to be the instigator for it. I doubt it, but I think that I hope it becomes a pivotal point for Hawaii, because it's Hawaii's been on my mind a lot, like what's going to be the future of our state.
Mhm.
And I hope that more businesses will come up with, different ideas for revenue. But we can't deny the fact that we're an attractive tourist place. I mean, we shouldn't be shy about that either. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, you can disagree with it, but I think Hawaii is amazing. It's an amazing tourist destination, and I don't think we should neglect that. That should still be very important for us to drive tourism to this amazing place. But that's just my thought. That's my opinion. But at the same time, I'm hoping that it'll draw the attention towards other ways that we can diversify.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you are sitting on the committee for the True Initiative. Can you share a little bit about that and your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a great group of people on the committee who are impressive people, and somehow they let me in the door. But they're great people, and my role is really to bring my area of expertise, which is specifically Salesforce, and to help support the types of activities that True is all about. It's about tech enabling Hawaii's people. And so one thing we do for tech enablement is we'll offer, mentorship programs, workshops, training opportunity, whatever it might be, we'd be happy to do that. We hosted a fireside chat to educate several businesses on what one of our clients is doing on the Salesforce platform to hopefully inspire more innovation. It doesn't have to, my piece is only that, but, obviously others are bringing their knowledge of domain, their domain knowledge on other technologies. But for me personally, that's what it's been for, is tech enabling and helping other businesses also see how they could maybe take advantage of Salesforce to drive more growth, more operational improvements.
Great. So Charlena is asking, last two questions from the audience. Charlena is asking, what plans does Pacific Point have for full-time job opportunities post-COVID?
What does it have planned for full-time jobs?
Mm-hmm. Are you guys hiring, I think, in a nutshell?
Yeah, we're still hiring. I think we've been fortunate. And again, like there's so many people that are not as fortunate. So I say this, with an extreme amount of gratefulness, that we've been very fortunate to keep our team busy through all of this. We've been able to continue to add value to our customers and our clients. And we've also been able to give back during this time. So it's been a really, I couldn't be more grateful for that. In that vein, yeah, I mean, we are hiring. We're thankful to be hiring. So yes, we're hiring.
Okay, check out the website, I believe, for the opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A very important question from Philip. He's asking, where can we get one of those hats that you're wearing?
Well, I think we should be, you can email me.
Okay, you heard that, Philip. She's inviting you to email her, so go get your hat. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Before we let Deena go, one final question from the team here at HTDC, True, and Sandbox. Give us one word you would like to leave the audience with today.
Ooh, we should have asked me this ahead of time. I could have prepared.
I did. It was in the list.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't read the full list. I'm gonna stick with the theme, experience.
Okay, experience. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Deena, for taking the time to speak with us today and share your valuable knowledge with us. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors through the amazing work you do with Pacific Point and with the True Initiative. Thank you so much once again for your time. For attendees, this session has been recorded, so we will share it with you. Keep a lookout in your inboxes. We have also sent a link to our survey, so I would appreciate it if you guys can complete it so we can create better content for you guys moving forward. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. Thank you so much again, Deena.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Thanks,
everybody.